So I'm Colin Hurd,
And I'm Sophie Collins.
and the purpose of today's session is really we're going to give you some information about the creative writing program here at the University of Glasgow, and then really we're here to answer any of your questions if we can. So do feel free to pop questions into the chat, and we can ask them, we can answer them after we kind of initially introduce the program, or you can also ask them if you're comfortable unmuting and asking them at the end as well. That's totally fine. I'm going to start talking first of all just about the course in general, and then I'm going to hand over to Sophie, who's going to talk through some newish over the last few years optional courses. And then I'm going to talk through some of the extracurricular things we have going on as well. And then we'll open up to questions. The creative writing MLitt here at the University of Glasgow, it's been going for over 20 years. And in that time, we've really are kind of year on year, I mean, I've not been here for 20 years, but year on year in the time that I have, we see we're just kind of constantly astonished by the work that our students produce and the places that they get their work published and produced and presented and performed. It's really incredible year on year to see the kind of sometimes prize winning and often really well acclaimed work that gets produced here on the program. And I think part of the reason for that is, I know actually part of the reason for that is the community of writers that kind of exists on the course. And one of the ways in which we really aim to build that and kind of nurture that is through teaching across genre. So while there are opportunities to specialize for specific genres, we also in the first semester really encourage people to think in terms of, so even if you come to the course with a strong sense of wanting to write within a particular form or genre, we encourage you to be really aware of the kind of opportunities of moving beyond that or kind of crossing over into other forms as well. So I'm going to take you through the course structure. So if you're studying the program full time, then then you do the course over 1 year, and in the first semester you take there's 3 main components. So they are craft and experimentation, editing and publication, and the workshop. So I'll start with the workshop because that's another way in which this community of writers really help each other and support each other and are kind of your own best kind of peer reading groups. So the workshop is a peer feedback group where if you're full-time, twice in a semester, you submit up to 2,000 words of creative writing, and your peers in the group read that attentively, carefully, and your tutor as well, and provide feedback. And then the weeks when you're not submitting, obviously you're providing feedback. And really we find that people learn just as much from giving feedback to other writers as they do from having feedback themselves. And it is often the part of the course that people talk about as being, just extremely, extremely valuable, having that group of really, thoughtful readers who are writers as well, and they understand what you're going through in writing your drafts, and they're going through the same process or similar processes in their own work. So that's the creative writing workshop. And there is assessment attached to that, which consists of, in the first semester, a sample of the feedback you're giving to your peers, and also a sample of your own creative work. So it's a portfolio of creative writing and a sample of the feedback you're giving to your peers. And then there's craft and experimentation. And craft and experimentation is a hybrid reading and writing course. So you're reading, again, across a range of genres. So it's, each tutor, depending on who's teaching it that semester, and there's usually a choice of tutor with different reading lists. The actual selection of publications that you're reading will vary depending on that. But I think I can speak for all of us that there's usually a real range of material, and part of the ethos of it is to stretch you beyond the kind of work that you maybe would normally be reading, and to encourage you to think about what's being done now. So usually those reading lists are pretty contemporary, work produced in the last few years, and they're refreshed every year. So we always kind of have new things on our reading lists, and partly just to keep things interesting for us, but also to respond to the kind of changing landscape of writing. And so each week you're reading some work of contemporary writing. You're also often reading some theory or some articles or criticism around that kind of furthers and kind of deepens the context of those texts. And then you're also responding in writing. And that can be, again, each tutor runs it slightly differently, but sometimes there's, a kind of weekly exercise that you're responding to something in the text in writing. Sometimes it's slightly less frequent than that. Some people prefer, to kind of balance it with other activities. But it's, it's really about reading carefully, reading as a writer, understanding the ways texts are put together, and the kind of different kind of theoretical approaches to that, and then kind of embedding a kind of understanding of that in your own writing. And again, just to kind of stress that on that reading list, let's say, for example, there's a collection of poetry one week. By no means are you being asked to write poetry for your response. You can respond to the ideas, to the form, to the structure, to the tone, to the atmosphere, to aspects of the kind of emotional content of the work through whatever form you want to write. And that's something that we'll definitely support you with when you're on the program. And then the other course in the first semester for full-time students is editing and publication. And that is a course which is currently being slightly redesigned. So I'm not going to say too much about it, but what I will say is that it's about understanding the processes by which writing finds an audience, meets the world, and kind of gets distributed and things like that. So it really considers, the sort of, and I don't really like using this phrase, but like the kind of business side of writing in a sense. It considers the processes of kind of finding an agent, editors, submitting to magazines, reading in reading series, podcasts, interviews, reviews, kind of all that sort of stuff that goes on in writing that sometimes needs a bit of kind of demystification. That's the kind of content of editing and publication, and there's often quite a lot of visiting speakers on that, and you really get to grips with the processes involved in how writing finds an audience and kind of meets the world. I'll just run through. So that's the first semester for full-time students. The second semester for full-time students, so for a lot of that, I'm going to pass over to Sophie, but I'll just mention that editing and publication continues into the second semester. And so most of you will do editing and publication in the second semester as well. And the workshop continues into the second semester. Craft and experimentation gets replaced by optional courses, which Sophie's going to go through. But just for anyone who's considering studying part-time, I'll just mention that the part-time structure, so where I've referred to first semester and second semester, for the part-time students, the first year, you have the workshop and you have craft and experimentation for the first semester of the first year. The second semester of the first year, you have the workshop and one of the optional courses that Sophie's going to talk through. And then in second year, you have the workshop again, which continues all the way through the course. And you have editing and publication in the first semester and second semester. So basically you do craft and experimentation and optional course plus workshop in the first year, and then editing and publication plus workshop in the second year. I know that I've rushed through that a little bit, so if you do have questions on any of that, put them in the chat or ask them at the end. But for now, I'm going to pass over to Sophie to talk through the optional courses.
Thanks, Colin. Hi, everyone. So yeah, as Colin said, in semester 2, unless you're part-time, in addition to EP and workshop, there are a range of exciting and challenging optional modules to choose from. We, as Colin said already, we strongly encourage experiment and exploration. So you can either choose to specialize in a genre or type of writing that you know interests you and that you want to probe further into, or you can try something entirely new out. And these are primarily modules for campus students. For DL students, you'll continue with a craft and experimentation module and looking at a range of prose, poetry, and other genres. We are at this stage floating the idea of having one or two of these optional modules available to DL students. So they would be taught online. This will be confirmed within the next couple of months. And as I go through these, I'll highlight for you which ones those are. Again, all of these are 2-hour sessions, and they're each a kind of combination of seminar and workshop content. So this usually means a discussion of some set texts, followed by writing exercises that could be set in advance or worked on in class. And the structure varies according to who is teaching that class and what their preferences are and their aims for the module are. So the first of these is a course called Of the Personal. This is a course that I designed and that I teach. And the subtitle is Emotions and the Self in Creative Nonfiction. So that's Of the Personal, Emotions and the Self in Creative Nonfiction. And in this course, we really focus, as the title suggests, on creative nonfiction. So really, this is about exploring the form and function of that genre of writing as distinct from prose fiction. And we sort of engage in close readings of a range of primary texts, of a range of creative nonfiction books. And these might be short form essays, they might be book length projects, they might be pamphlets. There's a sort of real range of form within creative nonfiction. Texts I've looked at with students in previous years, and some of which I plan to look at again next year, include ones by Claudia Rankine, Denise Riley, Bell Hooks, Svetlana Alexievich. And in that course, we also look at a range of affect and cultural theory. So books and articles by important contemporary theorists, including Lauren Ballant and Xian Nai. And it's in that way quite a challenging course that will aim to push you creatively and academically. And each of the classes in that course are sort of themed around a particular emotion or affect or affective state. So disgust, joy, nostalgia, envy, desire, infatuation will be sort of looking at what characterizes those emotions and how they manifest in the texts. The next optional module is Poetry Intervenes Now, with the subtitle Diverse Queer Strategies of Making. So this is another really exciting, very hands-on, very involved and involving module that, as its title suggests, focuses on poetry and poetics. And so it blends a close study of contemporary poetics, of ways of making and talking about poetry, with queer, feminist and BAME perspectives and standpoints. So again, a combination of close reading of exciting new poetries and their precursors, so queer poets from throughout the 20th century and perhaps even before that, and ways and strategies of applying these ideas to making your own poetry in the present. Another of our optional modules is crime fiction, where you'll explore the techniques, structures, and contexts of crime fiction, and will be enabled to develop your own writing practice and to produce original crime fiction. So really good for anyone who's sort of seeing their writing as very much focusing on that specific genre. The course involves close reading and analysis of a diverse range of crime fiction texts, explorations of the conventions and the plasticity of the genre, and workshopping of creative work. And occasionally this module also includes appearances from visiting guest speakers. Next module is Reading and Writing Death and Dying. So this is a really, really innovative module that examines the multidisciplinary topic of death and dying and focuses on how reading and writing about these subjects and about grief influences the way we think about and conceptualize these things. So by integrating the close reading and discussion of published work on death and dying, including workshopping of students' work, this course encourages new writing and collaborations underpinned by the idea that writing and reading about death gives us powerful tools to encourage communication about these often misunderstood and misrepresented topics. So that will be across a range of genres, across fiction, perhaps poetry, also creative nonfiction, and essays. The next module, and the last in this run, and I should say actually also reading and writing death and dying is one of the modules that will likely be available to DL students, and this current module that I'm about to tell you about, genre bending art of essaying, is the other one that may be available to DL students. The genre bending art of essaying is focused on essay writing as a experimental, literary and cross-disciplinary practice. So you'll focus in this module on how and why we write and read between and beyond genres, forms and disciplines, and integrate close readings and discussions of published essays with workshopping of your work, of student work. So it explores ideas of new writing and collaboration, underpinned by the idea that the experimental essay is a powerful form where essential ideas are hashed out and communicated. So that is a module that is also co-run with the art writing MLitt at Glasgow School of Art. So you'll likely be in a group with students from the art school, which can be a really interesting way to sort of reach out and explore other networks within and around Glasgow. Okay, so thank you. That's the optional modules. Again, any questions that have arisen about those, just write those down and we will field those at the end of this session.
Thank you so much, Sophie. The other aspect of the course that I wanted to kind of address in these initial remarks, and then we will just sort of open to your questions, is all the things that aren't sort of written into the curriculum per se. So we have a lot of visiting speakers throughout the year, and the kind of main sort of headline program for that is Creative Conversations, which happens every Monday lunchtime during term time, where we have a invited author. So it's 1 p.m. in the University Chapel or online. And we have invited authors from, you know, all different kind of styles and genres of writing. So playwrights, poets, fiction writers, non-fiction writers. We've had writers for television, writers for radio, performers, you know, different different kind of styles and kind of forms of writing are represented in the Creative Conversations lineup. And we've really had some amazing events over the years from you know, writers like Ian Rankin, Val McDermid, Alistair Gray, we've had Jamaica Kincaid, we've had Homi K. Baba, we've had Ngugi wa Thiong'o, we've had just too many to name, you know, loads and loads of writers represented in the series, and it is our sort of flagship events program. So you're really encouraged to come along to those events, either online or on campus. And it's often, you know, I think we all kind of often sort of draw on those when we're teaching as well. So there'll quite often be something that a writer will remark on when they're talking about their process or something in Creative Conversations that then comes up in seminars and in workshops. And so while they are not compulsory by any means, you know, they're really heavily encouraged that you come along to those if you can. And if you're along to this session thinking of applying, not this year, but in a, you know, future year, then you can, you know, once we start the series up again, there is actually one on Monday, this coming Monday, which had to be rearranged. So there's Michael Pedersen on Monday in the University Chapel at 1 p.m. or online, and you can find details of that. Well, I can put them in the chat later. There are a great way of kind of getting to know the program and kind of understanding the program a little bit, coming along to those Creative Conversations. But as well as that, there are lots of other things go on as well. So there are just kind of one-off visiting speaker events that we have throughout the year as well. So they basically will just get advertised to students when you're on the program. You'll see the notices go round about them, and so they take kind of all sorts of different forms. So sometimes they're just readings, sometimes they're readings and talks, or readings and interviews, conversation style, or sometimes they can be workshops. So we do sometimes invite writers in to deliver workshops for you as well. So just basically, when you're on the program, make sure you keep an eye out for all of those, because there are weeks where there are kind of multiple things going on in a week, and you definitely find that the people who sort of really try to come to as many of those as they can get the most out of the course. So obviously, I understand you've all got busy lives as well, so it's not always possible, but where you can, it's really advised to come to as many of those as you can. Other things that are kind of attached to the program, we have a series that's been running for a few years, which is called Soft Shell, and that's again a collaboration with the art writing program at Glasgow School of Art. And basically, it's a sort of open mic night held at the Poetry Club in Glasgow, and it's writers from art writing and from creative writing, and it's really just an opportunity to perform your work in a really encouraging, supportive environment, but a kind of public one. So it's a great way of kind of seeing what the students on the art writing program are doing, and vice versa, for them to see what the creative writing students are doing, and just to kind of see what your peers on the program are doing as well, because often you will see aspects of their work in workshops and in seminars, but you won't necessarily understand what they consider their kind of more finished work that they would perform, and that can sometimes be quite different. So it's a great social occasion, and it's just an opportunity to see and encourage your fellow students. And then the other thing to mention is there is a student-run writing magazine based kind of within the program, which is From Glasgow to Saturn. And there are call-outs each year for new people to join the editorial board of that. And then there are lots of other student-run projects and magazines, which obviously vary every single year. There are some great ones this year, and every year there are. So it's just to kind of encourage you to get involved in those as well, and to potentially, set up your own kind of either literary nights or magazines or zines or different things, which there is some support to do in editing and publication. There's a segment of that in terms of the assessment, which is doing your own editing and publication project, and often that takes the form of a kind of either a student-run night or a student-run zine or something like that. And so there's always lots of those kinds of things emerging and going on, and around this time of year is when a lot of them sort of kick off. So it's been quite interesting in the last few weeks going to some of those kind of launch events and things for those student-run publications. Can you think of anything else, Sophie, that I haven't mentioned in terms of those extracurricular things?
I don't think so. I feel like you've covered it.
I guess the only other thing to say is there are, so that's what we offer within creative writing, but when you're a member of the university, there are lots of other, you will get notifications about lots of other seminars across the whole of the College of Arts, and sometimes beyond that as well, university-wide things. And there are often some really, really fascinating things to go along to as far as that's concerned.